Okay, well today I'm not just driving to Taliban, I'm actually driving just to make videos because I'm very busy at home, and because of the acoustics, or let's say the soundproofing in the truck, it really is quite ideal for me to do my videos in here. So my videos are different from doing the videos of our simple life, and these are if anything, just recounting some of the lessons that I've lived in my life. I had a very perceptive Facebook, I think on Facebook, or in the comments of one of our videos, and for the life of me, I've got to tell you that I'm not tech savvy. So I'd made the mistake early on. I used to run my own Facebook page, I used to take photographs, I used to do all of that and upload and of course do my own text, because that's what I do. In a way, I'm a wannabe writer. I've written I think three books which I have for sale on let me see, Amazon is currently selling 3 of my books under the name Terence Flannery. I'll just explain to you the difference between Terence Flannery and Terence Martin. My name from birth is Terence Flannery because I'm from an Irish family. You could say I'm an English-born Irishman. But when I was a musician, I used to think that incorrectly now, but then the emphasis is different now on what names are, and especially with some of the actors that have almost unpronounceable names and yet they still stay with them. So I come from a period where people changed their names because they wanted to be something cooler or different, and I changed my name from Flannery to Martin. And when I went to Florida, I started to perform music-wise, and for some reason it just seemed to me that things had changed, and so I reverted to using the name Flannery, especially for my writing. I wrote under the name of Terence Flannery. But of course all of my ID still remains in the name of Martin. And recently I've been forced to use the name Martin because Facebook started to have different rules, and I never bothered to get Beth to explain what it was when she said, yeah, you need to use the name that is on your ID, and that is Terence Martin. So some of my stuff and some of the stuff that comes out is under Flannery, and some of it is under Martin. Well, so just explaining that little difference there. And so I think during the time that I've been learning my lessons, I was always in performing. I went into the army, but even prior to the army, I was a kid who liked to play. I really wanted to play the trumpet, but ended up playing the trombone because when I went in the army, they said, sorry, no vacancies on trumpet. I went into an army band. No vacancies on trumpet. You'll have to play the euphonium. I thought, oh my God, I didn't know what the euphonium was. I said, I don't really want to do that. And the other kids at this little kids' school said, why don't you play the trombone? The trombone is a great instrument. I said, is it really? Yeah, I said, but make sure that you play the tenor trombone and not the bass trombone. So I went with that, and so the tenor trombone has haunted me through my life. I keep leaving it behind, and it keeps catching me up, and I'm currently saving up so that I can get another trombone. I have a really poor non-working trombone that's leaking, so you can't get a sound going through it. They're made in China and cost 8,000 pesos, which is just silly money. So anyway, I went into the army, and these were early hard lessons for me, and I've since, I'm going to be going backwards and forwards on this, but as I was about to say a little while ago, when I got off on the change of name thing, that I had this very perceptive comment on one of our videos, and this subscriber suggested, and if I had that in front of me, if I'd been able to find that comment again, I would address him by his first name. Unfortunately, as I say, I'm not tech savvy. I did do I have a rule: if somebody sends me a well thought out, well written comment, and it's addressed to me personally and is about me, then I will reciprocate with a like response. So in other words, if it's a long comment and it actually makes sense to me, I won't reply with thank you for listening or thank you for watching. I'll actually get into a conversation with that. And because of that little rule that I've had, I actually have some incredible friends who write to me regularly. Some, a couple, let me see, no, gosh, 3 or 4 of those friends write to me almost every day. And so we have an ongoing conversation, and I always welcome that. Well, I responded to him, a good response, and when it didn't show up, I realized that I must have failed to hit send, which I do from time to time. And so the response to your comments, you'll know because you commented on how the way that I've lived my life is such that other people might wonder how I did it. So addressing you personally, you suggested that I should do a video on that, about how you can approach your life in a certain way, and in doing so you can go from strength to strength. Now, the point that my friend made was that the way that I've lived my life might seem not doable for a lot of people. A lot of people are much more conscious or cautious about how they live their life, and that has never been something that I've done. Being cautious is not one of my traits. Let's call them qualities. It's not one of my qualities of having patience and being careful and all of that. I do believe that you should take risks. That's why when I write and speak, when I speak from the viewpoint of trying to help someone who is considering coming to the Philippines, that they should just do it. Because sorry, I'm driving at the same time, okay, so sometimes I have to concentrate. So you really can't think too much about things. You really can't. If you keep thinking about it, you'll never do anything. When I was in Fort Myers, I was working as a mixed media artist. I was lucky because I was already on my pension, which I got from the US and which I got from the UK. Very modest pensions, because I spent about only 20 years in the US. Prior to that, I'd lived in the UK, and so the pension is what I call pitiful. Although someone said you shouldn't refer to your pensions as pitiful. That's something that you're being given courtesy of these two governments. not true. The two pitiful pensions that I get are the result of what I chipped in, and they're pitiful because I never earned a huge amount of money, and so my contributions were not huge either. So that's settled. So in trying to tell people, like, I hear and I respect all of those hesitant outlines that people give to me about why they should come or not come to the Philippines and what their reservations are, what their considerations are. I respect all of those, but what I've noticed is that many of what is suggested as a reason for not coming, I had those myself, and I just feel that you can't live your life that way. You have to take risks, and the reward for not taking risks can be a boring life. Mind you, that's always led to a lot of criticisms throughout my life for the fact that I haven't done that. Now, just to get out of the way, the fact that I'm not expounding on my life as this hugely successful thing. It hasn't been a hugely successful thing. I've strived and strived for a lot of things and failed, big time. I've always failed up to now at marriage, although I'm very successful at divorce, and I can see how I should have done it differently. I lost a great deal, and I caused a great deal of upset and unhappiness for other people by quitting at marriage. Even though when I look back and I think, why didn't I stay? And then I look at what staying would have meant. I can't see how I could have done it differently, except that maybe I should never have got married. Well, that's another thing. So the people that write to me that are saying, I have a plan, I've met someone online, lovely woman in the Philippines, and we are writing, we have a long distance relationship, and some people have been writing for 3 and 4 and 5 years because they started off just as like pen pals. Oh God, that shows my age, doesn't it? Pen pals. Now it's, of course, it's friends on Facebook, isn't it? It's not pen pals. So you can write to anyone. You can write to anyone very easily. So these people that write to me, these men, mostly men that write to me, I do have a lot of women write to me, but in the main, all that they really are saying is, can you find me a partner? Which, of course, we can't find anyone a partner. We don't know enough people. We're not a dating agency. So all of that is in the hands of someone else, possibly in the hands of the Lord. And so when people write to me and they say, we have a plan, my retirement, full retirement is in 4 years, and then I'll come to the Philippines and I'll build a house, and and I get these things, and they are wonderful plans, but I just remember my own experience where I got to the end of a terrible, well, what I think of as a terrible period, because I lost so much. I lost my marriage. This was in Fort Myers. I lost my marriage. I lost my house. I was bankrupt. I was living on my pensions, which is almost impossible to live a decent life, decently comfortable life in America with the pensions that I get, as we've said, the pitiful pensions. And And I was living courtesy of a friend. At first, I spent quite a time, at least a year after my marriage broke down, and I had registered bankrupt. I spent some of it living in what was actually like an art gallery come warehouse next to the public library in Fort Myers. Anybody that's looking on that knows Fort Myers will know that place. It's the one that it was owned by what I considered was a lovable, a really likable guy, but kind of a lovable eccentric in that he used to be given stuff, and he'd be given all kinds of paint that was left over from this job and that job, and whatever the colour, he'd use it on some part of that warehouse. And so it was multicoloured in all kinds of different colours. Well, I lived there very humbly for a while, and I did work on that place in return for rent, but he never charged me much on rent anyway, so I was able to live. Well, and then I took over a house of someone that was deceased, and I lived along with a roommate who I got along very well with at the time, and we lived in a house that was not in foreclosure, it was in probate. So whether it was actually owned by the bank or not, I very much doubt. It was in probate, and the man who owned it died, and it was in a rather nice community, not a gated community, but nevertheless a very nice community with a housing association and all of that. And what the immediate neighbours were concerned with was that the house would go into that long process of sometimes 4 or 5 or 6 years being in probate, and that the house would begin to look like a haunted house, and it would ruin life for everybody. So we were able to move in, and all we did was pay the bills and keep the house looking right, mow the lawn and stuff like that. So that was I stayed there, may have even been a year or 2 years. And that was a reasonably comfortable time, but it just wasn't going anywhere. So I decided that it was time to have an adventure. And this is kind of how I think, and perhaps this is what makes my friends say that I look at things differently, and that not everybody is able to do that. But that's for another video, and I was intending that I would do a series of videos on this kind of talk, so I'll end off this one here.